Welcome back to the channel, everybody. And today we're going to be talking about replacing your MacPherson strut. This is going to be the front strut on most modern cars. We're going to be doing it on a 2011 Honda CR-V, but it should be similar for any car that has struts. First thing you're going to want to do is jack the car up. And you want to jack both sides up so you get the entire front suspension off the ground to completely unload the suspension to make the job easier for you. Also, you want to chalk the back wheels, put your parking brake on to make sure the car doesn't roll. If you get the car on jack stands, we have the support on jack stands on both sides. You want to pull on it to make sure it's nice and strong and sturdy, not going anywhere, because you want to work safe. Take off your tires. One thing that you can do to get your tire out of the way and add a little bit more safety is put the tire underneath the car, so if it does fall off the jack stands, or if you have it only on jacks, you don't have jack stands, it's not going to fall all the way to the ground. Make it a little bit safer. Now, something else you want to look for, and that is the top of the strut mount. In this car, it's under the hood. Let's pop the hood, take a look at it. Now, when you look under the hood of the car, what you're going to look for, you look for studs coming up with nuts on top. A lot of them will have 3. Most cars, when you open the hood, you can see it. As soon as you open the hood, you'll see it over here. One for the right, one for the left. But this one's hidden. It's actually underneath this little cowling here. So what we got to do is turn the windshield wipers on, have them come all the way up, turn the key back off to where the windshield wipers stop. That'll make it easier for us to open this cover. Now you pull off your weather stripping, and then this cover should pull out. And now you can look inside here and see the nuts. One there, here, 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 and one hiding right here. So what that is, that's going to be the top mount to your strut. So you look under here, this is the bottom mount of your strut. Here's your strut all the way up here. Coil spring that we're going to have to take out. And then all the way up top, that's where that strut mounts to the body of the vehicle. Next, you want to release your wheel speed sensor from the strut itself. This is what we're going to be replacing. So these can be quite aggravating. I like to try to get this out, put it in the new shocks. Totally up to you what you do. But some of these tools that you can use for panels, interior panels and all that, they do pretty good at getting these out. But of course, everything like this tends to break. You want to have some patience and be easy with it. You especially don't want to break the wire. Then you're adding more money to your repair cost. And just like that, you can pop that out. Then this should push up. Like that, and that's out of the way. Of course, during the repair, you want to be careful of that. And on the other side, this is your brake line. You want to take the 12mm bolt off because it's also attached to the strut. Push it out of the way. Next, we're going to be taking the sway bar link loose. As you see in here, you have a hex head. That's to help hold this bearing in here while you loosen the 17mm nut. Sometimes these can be quite a pain in the butt. I like to use hand tools as much as possible. So what I like to do is I'll put 2 wrenches together like this. Give me some leverage and try to loosen it by hand first. And hope that that at least breaks the torque before I have to use an Allen wrench. Let's see. Yeah. Perfect. Something to help too is a little bit of penetrating oil. Now you can see our sway bar link is disconnected, or is loose. Now we'll fully disconnect it. Now when the bearing starts to spin, put your Allen wrench in there, turn it till it hits something solid, and then use it to hold the bearing while you turn the nut. And next you want to loosen the pinch bolts right here at the bottom of the strut. Now you don't want to take these all the way out yet because you still want all this stabilized before we go up top and loosen the nuts at the top. Now we have our upper mounts loose on top. We have these loose down here, pinch bolts. Something you want to be careful of is when this strut comes down, the steering knuckle, the only thing that's keeping this thing from flipping all the way out is the strut itself, which is what we're taking out. You want to get something like a jack down here to support on the bottom of the lower control arm. If you let this steering knuckle pivot all the way down, it could pull out, pull on the CV axle where the nut's connected to it here, right into the hub, and it could actually damage the whole CV shaft. Now you can take this nut off if you want to, and that would not completely eliminate the problem, but it'll make it a little bit better for you. But all I do is I put a jack underneath. I don't worry about this nut. Put a jack underneath, support it, and then I'll put some zip ties once we get these bolts out and the strut all the way out. Put some zip ties here to go around part of the body, and that'll keep this up and keep it from damaging anything. A lot of times I'll take the bolt out, then I'll put a brass drift in there, just in case something happens. Wait, there's something in there to keep it from falling all the way out. Now I put a little bit of pressure on it with the jack. I'm going to let off that pressure. And your bolt should be able to come out like that. Now if your bolt has a hard time coming out, you should be able to move the strut around like this because we already have it loose at the top. So it should wiggle around. If it doesn't, then you got a problem somewhere. Something's binding. If it still won't come out, you don't want to beat this out with a drift. Try to screw it out. Put your ratchet on there, screw it out, because you don't want to damage those threads. All right. Now, since we have it supported at the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and finish taking the mount bolts off at the top. So our mount nuts are completely removed from up top. Bolts loose, have a little drift in there. Obviously you want to be careful of the brake line and the speed sensor cable. Those can break really easy. So what you want to do is, now that this is pretty much disconnected from the frame, you want to try to get a good plan of where you want the strut to come out, because it's pretty heavy with the spring and everything. You can lower down the jack a little bit. That'll pull it out of the top. All right, now our top is completely loose. Totally free of the mounts. Then you want to keep pressure on the top of the knuckle so this doesn't fall all the way out. I've got 2 zip ties ready. Come all the way around part of the body, top of the steering knuckle. And this doesn't have to be super strong. This is just a little insurance. Keep that knuckle from coming down. Just like that. Leave it like that. Shouldn't have any problems. Now if you're observant, you'll see that I changed the sway bar length on both sides. I wasn't planning on doing that originally, but they were really worn out. They were in real bad shape. So I figured I might as well get some new links, put them on here, since I have all this apart. Well, I had to completely cut the studs off the bottom down here to get them out. They were not fun. So if you decide to do that, just be aware if you have this particular vehicle, 190,000 miles, that you may have to cut those off. Just give yourself plenty of time. Anytime you do suspension work like this, give yourself plenty of time for anything to go wrong. I gave myself 2 days. Then my wife didn't have to have this vehicle. So anyway, let's take the strut apart. All right, now I decided to change these struts because they were making a lot of racket. Every time my wife would hit bumps in the front, you could just hear them like they were rattling. They weren't leaking, which a lot of times you can tell the strut's bad if they're leaking. Then you can see the boots torn pretty bad. Of course, I'm not going to change the strut just because the boot's torn, but that shows you it's got some age on it. But also the tires were starting to wear on the outsides. Both front tires, the outsides were starting to wear prematurely. So I figured with so many miles in this car, more than likely the original struts, we'll go ahead and change them out. So first thing we want to do, put spring compressors on the springs. You never want to take this center nut off until you have this spring compressed. Something bad may happen to you. Now if you look, Honda recessed this nut all the way down. They did not help us DIY guys at all. So what they want is they want you to have a special tool that goes down in there and then allows you to put an Allen wrench in place to be able to hold the shaft while you loosen the nut. So what I did, took an old socket, cut a hole out in it. That way you can put it on there like that and you can still put your Allen wrench inside to hold the shaft and loosen it. Let's take this off. Put your nut off, top mount, and the spring. And just like that, your old strut's removed. Now you can check it. This was not too bad. The other one was a lot worse than this. But it's still a little weak. I mean, I can, well, there it goes. See how easy it was to push down? Shouldn't be that simple to push down. All right. Take the old torn boot out. Now I got KYB struts. They're not stock. And we've got these new KYB dust boots. So what you have to do is you have to remove the old stock boot right here in order for the new setup. So what I'm going to do is take the rest of this off, the part that's torn. May just leave that like that. because the new stuff's going to go up inside like that. So the way KYB does it, it's a lot different than the stock setup. Is the bump stop, it's going to slide on the shaft of the strut, and then the boot seals on the bottom of the bump stop, and then that protects the rest of the shaft. And it's going to go in there just like that. And our new strut should have a little keeper on there. Just push down, move that out of the way, and it should come out on its own. And then you can tell the new strut is a lot stronger. Comes with a new nut on top. And one of the first things you want to do is check to make sure you have the right part. So you want to lay them the same way. This is for your brake line, it's in the right spot. That's for your speed sensor cable. And then your sway bar link, they appear to be all in the right spots. Looks good to me. Get this old one out of here. But you can see with the spring, this notch right here is what's going to go in that recess. And you'll see better when I hope you'll be able to see better when I go to put it back together. But this is the way KYB says to set up their dust boot. Put it on like that. And then the bump stop will be tight against the shaft right there. Then you want to put your spring back on. Make sure that your spring seats are still in a good spot. Appear to be good. And then if you look right down here, you can see it just wants to fall in the right spot. You can turn it like that. Doesn't quite look right. Doesn't look like it seats right. And then you turn it, and as you turn right there, it falls into place. I'm not even looking at it, and I can tell that's the right spot. So now for our upper mount, you can see that it only goes one way. This is made for a right hand or left hand, so it's the same mount that goes on either side, but they have to be turned the correct direction. So what you want to do, of course, you want to make sure that everything's in place like it's supposed to be, right? And then depending on which one we're doing, which we're doing the left side, it has an L right here with an arrow, and it's saying that the arrow needs to point outboard, which outboard, the way it's laying right now, is going to be down. We can adjust this when we go to put it on, but that's something important because you don't want to get all this thing together and then have it turn the wrong way, get it all the way put back in, and have to pull it back out. So with that, we'll just put the upper mount on top. And now the long process of tightening the nut. And I'm gonna need my wrench for a little help torquing. Put that like that against the garage floor. And it's torqued. Even though it's torqued, you can still turn the upper mount where you need it to be. So now the bottom of the spring, you want to make sure that it's where it needs to be, in the correct spot. And now loosen up our spring compressors. Put our cap back on top. Now we're ready to install. Cut that off. Keep pressure on it so we don't damage the CV axle. Pick up the spring and strut and come on down like this. And then come up without breaking anything. And you want to try to get the strut or the steering knuckle inside the strut. There we go. That's where our drift comes in handy. There you go. Whew. Then that allows you to be able to rest for a little bit. Now up top, remember we had those 5 studs. You want to try to line those up as close as possible, and you can slowly jack up the whole assembly. I'm not looking at it right now, just trying to get it close. And that one's in there. Take the drift out. This one should be close. All right. Now I just put the threads in there. I like to leave the shanks out so I can put NICs on the shanks, makes it easier to come out next time. For the next guy, which will probably be me. Now you can put this on the shank, but you do not want to put it on the threads. That's why it's a good idea to go ahead and install the bolts, leave the shanks sticking out. Spread your NICs around the shank. Plus it helps the alignment guy out too, if he needs to pull these bolts. Now we can connect our brand new sway bar link. Now connect our brake line and reinstall speed sensor cable. Just push that down into there, and we managed to save this little connector. Push it back in place, just like that. Put all 5 of our mount nuts back on top. Now with the top nuts snug down, we can loosen this jack and the strut and everything won't fall out. Alright, so put both tires on in the front, because I did the other side also, but I wasn't going to film both sides. I don't want to bore you too bad. Torque the lug nuts, let it all the way down. When you let it down, you can actually hear the suspension settling. And you want it to sit natural. You don't want the hardware to tighten down and kind of have it in a bind. That could create more noise and it could create other problems. So what you want to do, leave the 2 pinch bolts at the bottom loose. Leave the top mount nuts loose. Lower the car down, but you don't want to just lower it down, because even though you got it all the way down, everything could still be in a bind. You want to actually crank the car up. You want to roll it backwards a little bit, roll it back forward. That way everything settles where it's supposed to be. Now this car is so low to the ground, pretty difficult to tighten the pinch bolts from the bottom without having the car up in the air. So what I did, I moved the car back, put ramps down, drove the car up the ramps. Now I'm going to tighten up the 2 pinch bolts in the bottom, 5 nuts on top, and we'll be completely finished. Well, that's it for this job. Of course, when you get done with this, you want to have a alignment done, 4-wheel alignment. You may want to do the rear struts at the same time. That way you can get one alignment done, be completely finished. Car's going to sound better. It's going to ride better. Thank you for hanging out with me today. We hope you have a great day. See you next time. If you like what I've done today, like and subscribe. We'll see you later.